guys, welcome to today's video. Let's go and check out 10 best heel turns in wrestling history. Before we start with the video, check out my Patreon for more WWE reactions weekly, even 3 to 5 videos a week related to WWE. Let's go.
Damn, it feels good to be the bad guy. There are many things that go into making a fine heel turn. The shock factor, the right babyface to turn on, the new mean and nasty theme
the video is by What Culture Wrestling.
However, the most important factor in a successful turn is the heel's reason for doing what he did. The more justified the heeling, the more uncomfortable and angry it makes the fans. Like when I super kicked Jack's head off his shoulders, I was just protecting my spot at the top of the channel, keeping him in line, just like I did to Pachita and I'll do to any other motherfucker who feels like stepping up and chatting bold. I'm Adam from WhatCulture.com, and here are the 10 best heel turns in wrestling history.
Hi, Adam.
Number 10, Orndorff clotheslines Hogan. If you're going to turn bad, why not do it against the biggest babyface in wrestling? Mr. Wonderful, aka Paul Orndorff, despite battling Hogan in a tag match at the first ever WrestleMania, soon became the Hulkster's tag partner and one of the top babyfaces in the country. However, cracks began to show when Adrian Adonis began referring to Orndorff as Hulk Jr. Oh, look how small he is. Orndorff's frustrations with Hogan played out carefully and deliberately, including famously phoning the Hulkster live on TV, only to be told, sorry, he's too busy working out to talk. Ouch. Mr. Wonderful eventually pulled the trigger on his turn and clotheslined Hogan after a match, leading to a half-year feud that included a show in Toronto that drew 70,000 fans and a famous cage match on Saturday Night Main Event where both men escaped and their feet touched the ground at the same time. The heel turn and what followed was a huge critical and commercial success for WWF. Number 9, Flair turns on Sting. Oh, Sting, you idiot. There's a long-running joke that Sting is the dumbest man in wrestling because all his partners turn on him. Lex Luger, Bret Hart, Andy Savage, Scott Steiner's dogs. Everyone turns on Sting and he falls for it every time. Maybe there's lead in that face paint. The best of the best, however, has to be Ric Flair double-crossing Sting at Halloween Havoc 1995. I mean, Flair made his living in the early 90s being a massive dick to Sting, yet somehow he convinced him to team up with him to face Arn Anderson and Brian Pillman at Halloween Havoc. Then, Flair was injured before the match, so Sting had to fight half the match by himself. Yep, all cool so far. So out comes Flair halfway through the match, dressed like a civilian, and the crowd pop. Flair is confined to the apron, cheering on his partner, and it takes an agonizing 10 whole minutes for Sting to finally make the tag. He does, and the first thing Flair does is clock Sting in the face, because it's Ric Flair. Number 8, Jericho smashes Michaels, the quintessential example of a bad guy feeling completely justified in his actions. During a match at Backlash between HBK and Batista, Michaels faked a knee injury to somehow pick up the win. Jericho was the ref for that match, and the deception annoyed him. Later, somehow, Michaels managed to convince Y2J that he was actually hurt, before then super kicking him to prove that he wasn't. Oh, Shawn, you little confusing monkey. Despite Jericho being completely in the right in this situation and HBK being completely in the wrong, the fans still cheered Michaels and booed Y2J. After all the injustice was too much, Jericho viciously attacked Michaels on the highlight reel, low-blowing him and sending his face crashing into a TV. What followed then was the best feud of 2008. Number 7, The Barber Shop, a brilliant heel turn rendered even more iconic by the fact it led to one of the best singles careers in the history of professional wrestling. Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty were the Rockers, a flamboyant team of acrobatic goofs who wore bad clothes. But as Adam Pacitti found out, a team can have all the chemistry in the world, but there comes a time when the more charismatic of the two must seize the spotlight. In one of Brutus the Barber Beefcake's barbershop segments, That's Hard to Say, in 1992, Jannetty finally committed the ultimate act of cowardice in trying to escape through a window. Will you stop? HBK actually super kicked his buddy and sent him flying through a pane of glass, and then went on to huge success. Number 6, the double turn. The double turn. It's rare, but when done right, it can be storytelling perfection. One man enters into a match the face, the other the heel, and both men leave having swapped sides. Del Rio and Dolph Ziggler pulled it off at Payback 2013, but the best example in wrestling history was Bret Hart and Steve Austin's no-DQ submission match at WrestleMania 13. Hart's no-nonsense goody two-shoes shtick had started to wear thin, while Austin's no-nonsense heel persona was resonating with the 90s crowd. In the match itself, Hart beat Austin by slapping the sharpshooter on him, but the rattlesnake never submitted, instead opting to pass out in his own blood, with the fans cheering on his resilience. The Hitman then continued the assault after the match, cementing him as the bad guy and Austin as the unlikely hero. Demonstrated purely through action rather than words, this was a turn booked to perfection. Number 5, the Mega Powers explode. Now, this is an example of long-term storytelling at its best. The story lasted for a full year and a half. Sure, it wasn't at the forefront the entire time, but looking back, everything wrapped up beautifully. In October 1987, Hogan and Savage had an infamous handshake to become allies, combining Hulkamania with macho madness and a wonderful cocktail of terrible mental problems. A few months later at WrestleMania 4, Randy Savage won the WWF Championship following an assist from the Hulkster, fending off Andre the Giant and Ted DiBiase. Savage and the Hulkster face off against those two men again at SummerSlam, in the process officially dubbing themselves the Mega Powers. However, Hogan began acting a little too friendly with Miss Elizabeth for Randy's liking, with Savage showing frustration at this at Survivor Series. Then at Royal Rumble, Hogan accidentally eliminated Savage whilst eliminating Bad News Brown, and the two almost came to blows. Finally, the break happened when a paranoid Savage turned heel, attacking Hogan in February on an NBC special, The Main Event. So, at WrestleMania 5, 18 months after they first shook hands and a year since Savage first won the title, the two men faced off at WrestleMania for the gold, having told an incremental but perfectly plotted story of Savage turning to the dark side. Number 4, Zbysko betrays his mentor. Now, this took place 35 years ago, but it's still recognized as one of the best turns of all time. Larry Zbysko, with a name on the Mr. Mixer's Pitlick scale of being hard to spell, was trained by the legendary Bruno Sammartino and was widely regarded as his protege. In an attempt to escape his teacher's shadow, Zbysko challenged Sammartino to a match in 1980. Larry couldn't out-wrestle his mentor, and his frustrations got the better of him, attacking Sammartino with a wooden chair and leaving him to bleed heavily. In a time when many still believed wrestling was real, Zbysko became the most hated man in the sport. His car was vandalized, taxis he traveled in were overturned, he was hit by a fan with an iron pole, and even stabbed in the bum by a crazed Brunoholic after a match. Now that is a heel turn. Number 3, the Freebirds attack the Von Erichs. The five-man wrestling family, the Von Erichs, are remembered for two things. One, the tragic circumstances whereby all but one of the five brothers died within 1 decade. And, much more positive, their lauded rivalry with the fabulous Freebirds. The Von Erich boys were noble and pure, the Freebirds were cocky and flamboyant. And their six-man matches in Texas in the 1980s were the stuff of legends. And it all began with a heel turn. Freebird Michael Hayes, this guy, was babyface at the time and made special enforcer in a cage match between Kerry Von Erich and Ric Flair. At one point, Hayes clocked Flair and left him for Kerry to pin, but the Von Erich refused. Not that way. Taking offense at such elitism, Hayes left, and when Kerry went after him, fellow Freebird Terry Gordy smashed the cage door into his face. The Freebirds were loathed in Texas ever since, and this act of barbarism almost started a riot. Number 2, Andre rips a shirt. Hulk Hogan has really nice shirts. Like, he has really nice shirts. Andre the Giant was one of the most universally beloved figures in wrestling. A giant man with a giant heart, they said, which is also partly what killed him, but let's move on. In 1987, Andre's health had begun to deteriorate, and Vince wanted to give him one giant last main event befitting of his huge status. Despite being babyface for 15 years, the bold decision was to turn him heel and put him against Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 3. How? Well, it all happened on Piper's Pit. Hogan had been presented with a giant trophy for being WWF champion for 3 years, and Andre got a much smaller one for being undefeated for his entire career, which he technically wasn't, but shut up. Upset at receiving a smaller surrogate penis than the blonde guy, Andre hired the weasel Bobby Heenan to be his manager, challenged Hulk to a match at Mania, then ripped Hogan's shirt, the absolute French It ranks so highly, not just for being absurdly shocking to see eternal babyface Andre go bad, but it also led to one of the most iconic moments in pro wrestling history, the slamming of the giant. Number 1, Hogan is the third man. You talk about it being shocking when Andre went bad, that were nothing on the Hulkster. The Tangerine sex tape racism grandpa might be persona non grata these days, but he was professional wrestling for a whole damn decade. Throughout the 80s and the early 90s, the Red and Yellow Warrior had forever been a babyface, telling kids to eat their vitamins, say their prayers, and whatever it was that Pasta Mania was all about. At Bash at the Beach 1996, after Scott Hall and Kevin Nash defected from WWF to WCW, Hogan did the unthinkable. He dropped a leg on his buddy Randy Savage and turned heel, finally telling the fans who'd loved him for over a decade to stick it. Seriously, this is like if Jesus turned heel by stabbing Santa. Well, not really, truth be told. Good Hulk had been rubbing older fans the wrong way for a while, and in a lesson that WWE steadfastly refuses to learn, instead of having fans divided behind a babyface, they chose to have fans united against a heel. And with the NWO, fronted by Hollywood Hulk Hogan, WCW set the wrestling scene on fire, pummeling their rivals WWF into the dirt. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm off to give that little toddler Jack another righteous beating. And that's our list. Did we miss any out? Tell us about it in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Okay,
and you can follow me on
such a good
Twitter.
video and very
I'm Adam from WhatCulture.com, and I'll see you soon.
Yeah, man, makes you think like wrestling in the 1980s and the 90s was so much more savage. Like, at least like there were so many more people, bigger percentage of people who thought that wrestling is real. Wrestling is not fake, keep that in mind, but it's not real. And people would thought that it is. And when something like this happen, it's so devastating. Like actual riots can happen, and that is crazy. Even today, there are people who think some stories and whatnot are not fake. Like they think that the stories are real too. Like if two people end up together or whatever, they say, oh, they cheated on their husband and wives. No, man, it's only for the screen. How do you not get it? It's like some people really think it's true. But yeah, and also like the feud and whatever, they think it's real too. For example, Solo Sikoa and Roman Reigns, they literally hugged after the event. Immediately there was a picture on social media and people were like, oh, but we thought like that they are like they don't like each other anymore. So that they're cousins, brother. It's all story. Like they are performing, they are acting for us, they're giving us the show, and then after the show they're just being professional, and then after the show they're being in their private life personal, you know, and that should not be connected whatsoever. You have to like live through that, you know, like you have to um, fake it for yourself so you can get entertained. But yeah, that is it. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to check out my Patreon for more WWE content. Actually, mentioning Andre the Giant, I do plan to watch for the first time ever The Princess Bride, and I will be sharing it on my Patreon. Probably some clips here and there I will be sharing on my React channel. But yeah, that is it. Thanks so much for watching. See you. Bye.